The fork slipped from Zoe's fingers, clattering against the porcelain plate like a gunshot in the hushed dining room. Alara's eyes met hers across the flickering candlelight, wide with a panic that mirrored the thunder rumbling outside the old Voss estate windows. "Zoe, say something," Alara whispered, her voice breaking on the edge of a secret too heavy to hold alone anymore. In that suspended breath, Zoe knew the dinner invitations had never been about friendship. They were lifelines tossed into the churning waters of denial, pulling them both toward a shore neither dared to name. Zoe Harlan had always believed that the quietest betrayals cut the deepest, the ones wrapped in silk and served with wine under the guise of civility. She drove the winding backroads of Monroe County, Georgia, that humid August evening, the air thick with the scent of magnolias and regret, her old pickup truck groaning against the potholes like it carried the weight of her own unspoken yearnings. The Voss estate loomed at the end of Oak Hollow Lane, a relic of antebellum grandeur now fraying at the edges, peeling white paint on the columns, ivy clawing up the brick like fingers desperate for purchase. It was the kind of place that whispered of old money clinging to newer sins, where the town's elite gathered to pretend the world hadn't shifted beneath their feet. Alara Voss had invited her again, the fourth time in as many months. "Just a friendly dinner," the note had read, slipped into Zoe's mailbox at the feed store where she worked, her days spent stacking sacks of grain and advising farmers on drought-resistant seeds. Zoe wasn't sure why she kept accepting. Maybe it was the way Alara's handwriting looped like a confession, elegant and hesitant, or the memory of their first meeting at the county fair last spring. Alara in a sundress the color of ripe peaches, laughing too freely at Zoe's joke about stubborn mules, her hand brushing Zoe's arm in a touch that lingered like summer heat. The gravel crunched under her tires as she pulled up, the house's porch light casting long shadows that danced like ghosts across the lawn. Zoe smoothed her chambray shirt, the one without the grass stains, and stepped out into the evening chorus of crickets. The door opened before she could knock, and there was Alara, framed in the warm spill of lamplight, her dark hair loose around her shoulders, wearing a simple linen blouse that caught the breeze like a sail. "You came," Alara said, her smile a fragile thing, blooming and fading in the same breath. "Of course," Zoe replied, stepping inside, the scent of rosemary and garlic wrapping around her like an embrace she didn't trust. The dining room was intimate, a long oak table set for two, candles guttering in silver holders that had probably seen generations of Voss family secrets. No husbands, no siblings, no prying eyes from the Monroe social circle, just them, and the unspoken tension that hummed like the strings of an untuned guitar. They settled into their chairs, the clink of wine glasses a ritual now. Alara poured from a bottle of Cabernet, deep red like the clay soil that stained everything in these parts. "Tell me about your week," she said, leaning forward, her green eyes catching the flame's reflection, turning them to embers. Zoe obliged, spinning tales of the feed store's chaos, a calf birth gone wrong, old Mr. Hargrove's rant about corporate seed giants squeezing the life out of family farms. Alara listened with that rapt attention that made Zoe feel seen, truly seen, in a town where women's stories were often footnotes to men's legacies. But as the meal progressed, roast chicken with herbs from Alara's garden, cornbread still warm from the oven, Zoe's gaze kept drifting to the silver-framed photos on the mantel. Alara's father, stern in his judge's robes, her mother, poised at a debutante ball, and Alara herself, younger, arm-linked with a man whose face blurred in Zoe's memory, the fiancé who'd vanished after law school whispers turned to scandal. Alara followed her gaze and sighed. A sound like wind through Spanish moss. "They watch us, don't they? Like they're still here, judging every bite." Zoe reached across the table, her fingers brushing Alara's knuckles, a spark that made them both pull back. "Maybe they're just jealous of the company." It was a light deflection, but Alara's laugh was genuine, peeling back layers of the facade she wore so well. The dutiful daughter, the straight-arrow attorney who'd clerked for the state Supreme Court, the woman who dated men at galas but confided in Zoe over late-night texts about the emptiness of it all. The storm rolled in as they cleared plates, rain lashing the windows like accusations. Alara suggested coffee on the porch, and Zoe agreed, drawn by the pull of those uncharted waters. They wrapped in shawls against the chill, settling into wicker chairs that creaked under their weight. Lightning forked the sky, illuminating the fields beyond, where cotton plants bowed like penitents. I shouldn't keep doing this, Elara murmured, staring into the dark. Inviting you here. People talk, you know. In a place like Monroe, whispers turn to wildfires. Zoe turned, her heart a steady drum against her ribs. Then why do you? The question hung there, heavy as the humidity, and Elara's silence stretched, broken only by thunder. When she finally spoke, her voice was a threadbare whisper. Because with you I don't have to pretend. Not entirely. That night, as Zoe drove home through sheets of rain, the wipers slashing like doubts, she replayed the evening in her mind. The way Elara's foot had nudged hers under the table, accidental yet deliberate. The shared glance over dessert, laden with what-ifs. Zoe had come out in college, up in Athens at the university, where queer flags flew unapologetically and love wasn't bartered for approval. But back in Monroe at 28, she navigated the town's Bible Belt undercurrents like a tightrope walker. Dates in Atlanta, a life half-lived, always returning to the farm her parents left her, a patch of red earth that demanded solitude. Elara was different, a Voss through and through, her family name etched on the courthouse steps. Straight as the Magnolia Line drive to their estate, or so the town believed. Engaged once to a banker from Savannah who embodied every expectation. Stable Protestant, promising a life of garden parties and legacy. But he'd left, citing her distant heart. And the rumors swirled. Ambition, infidelity, or something unspoken that made Elara withdraw into her books and briefs, her nights spent alone in that echoing house. The next invitation came 2 weeks later, tucked into a book Zoe borrowed from the library. Elara's subtle code, a pressed wildflower marking the page. Zoe hesitated, her reflection in the bathroom mirror showing eyes shadowed by indecision. What harm in one more dinner? Friendship, after all, was the safest harbor. But harbors could hide reefs. The evening unfolded like the last, with stories and wine, but the air felt charged, the candles burning lower, casting shadows that played across Elara's face like secrets yearning to escape. They talked of dreams deferred, Zoe's abandoned art degree, sketches of the Georgia landscape gathering dust in her attic, Elara's longing to defend the underdog in court, not just parse legalese for the powerful. You're braver than you know, Elara said, her hand lingering on Zoe's as she passed the salt. The touch was electric, a current that raced up Zoe's arm, settling in her chest like a storm cloud. Outside, the cicadas droned their endless hymn, and when Elara stood to refill their glasses, she stumbled slightly, wine sloshing onto the tablecloth. Clumsy tonight, she laughed, but her eyes held Zoe's a beat too long, a question unspoken. Zoe rose to help, their shoulders brushing in the narrow space between table and sideboard. The world narrowed to that point of contact, the faint scent of Elara's lavender soap mingling with the rain-damp earth. I'm sorry, Elara breathed, stepping back, her cheeks flushed not from the wine. I don't know what's come over me. Zoe wanted to say it was the same thing that gripped her, the ache of possibility in a world that measured love by its conformity. Instead, she murmured, nothing to be sorry for. They returned to their seats, the moment folding into the evening like a crease in fine linen, invisible but indelible. As the clock struck 10, Zoe gathered her keys, the reluctance a weight in her limbs. At the door, Elara clasped her hand, the grip firm, desperate. Come back soon? Please. Her voice cracked, and in that fracture, Zoe glimpsed the chasm beneath, the straight woman unraveling thread by thread. Driving away, the stars piercing the clearing sky, Zoe whispered to the empty cab. What are we doing? The question echoed unanswered, a prelude to the unraveling that would bind them tighter than any vow. Weeks blurred into a rhythm of stolen evenings, each dinner a step deeper into the labyrinth. Elara's texts grew bolder, photos of sunsets over the Chattahoochee, quotes from Auden about the terror of desire. Zoe replied in kind, her guarded heart cracking open like parched soil after rain. They spoke of Monroe's underbelly, the factory closures that gutted families, the church sermons laced with veiled condemnations, the way class lines hardened like the red clay after drought. One night, as autumn leaves turned the estate's oaks to fire, Elara confessed over pecan pie. I thought I was safe with him, Thomas, my ex. He fit the script. Church on Sundays, country club brunches. but it was all ash inside. Her fork trembled, pie untouched. Zoe watched, the candlelight carving hollows in her cheeks. "And now?" Zoe asked, voice low. Alara met her gaze, steady for the first time. "Now, I wonder what a different script looks like." The words hung, a bridge half-built. Zoe crossed it with a nod, her pulse a wild thing. "It starts with honesty." That honesty simmered through the fall, dinners evolving into walks along the estate's overgrown paths, where Alara spoke of her mother's expectations, the Voss name as both crown and cage. Zoe shared fragments of her own scars. The farm's mortgage looming like a specter, the isolation of being the town's quiet queer girl, loving women in shadows while the world demanded daylight facades. By November, the invitations felt like summons, each one pulling Zoe closer to the flame. The town noticed, whispers at the diner about Alara's new project, code for the farm girl invading sacred spaces. Zoe's cousin Lila warned her over coffee at the Rusty Mule. "Vosses don't mix mud with their mint juleps, so tread light." But Zoe treaded on, drawn by the gravity of Alara's gaze, the way her laughter filled the empty rooms. Little did she know, the first betrayal brewed not in malice, but in the terror of truth. A phone call from Alara's aunt, the family matriarch, reminding her of duty, of the upcoming holiday ball where alliances were forged in silk and suspicion. The storm that had heralded their first charged evening returned one December twilight. Fiercer now, winds howling through the pines like omens. Zoe arrived soaked, Alara wrapping her in a towel that smelled of home. They ate by the fire that night, flames mirroring the heat building between words unspoken. As rain drummed the roof, Alara set down her glass, her hand finding Zoe's across the rug. "I can't keep pretending," she said, voice a raw edge. "Not with you." Zoe's breath caught, the world tilting. She leaned in, their foreheads touching, the space between them electric with possibility. "Then don't." Their lips met then, tentative as the first snowflake, then deepening into a hunger long denied. Alara tasted of wine and want, her fingers threading Zoe's hair, pulling her closer. Time dissolved in that kiss, the fire crackling approval, the storm outside a symphony to their surrender. When they parted, gasping, Alara's eyes shone with tears. "I'm straight, Zoe. Or I was. God, what am I?" Zoe cupped her face, thumb tracing the curve of her jaw. "You're you. And that's enough." In that moment, wrapped in each other's arms on the hearthrug, the world beyond the estate faded, the town's judgments, the family legacies, the chasm of norms. But dawn would bring light to shadows, and with it, the first fracture in their fragile peace. The kiss lingered in Zoe's dreams that night, a phantom warmth against her skin as she tossed on her narrow farm bed, the quilt her grandmother stitched pulling tight like restraint. Morning came gray and unforgiving, coffee bitter on her tongue as she stared at the frost-laced window, the fields beyond a blank canvas for doubts. Alara's text arrived at dawn. "Last night was everything. Come tonight?" No qualifiers, no friendly veil, just raw invitation. A door cracked open to the unknown. Zoe worked through the day in a haze, sacks of feed blurring into one another, customers' voices a distant hum. Lila cornered her at lunch, arms crossed over her diner apron, eyes sharp as shears. "Saw your truck at the Voss place again. What's the play, cousin?" Alara's not the type to slum it for sport. "It's not like that," Zoe said, though the words tasted like half-truths. Lila snorted, wiping down the counter with vigor that spoke volumes. "In Monroe, everything's like that. Bloodlines don't bend, they break." The warning echoed as Zoe drove back that evening, the sun dipping low, painting the sky in bruises of purple and gold. The estate welcomed her with its familiar silhouette, but tonight the air held a different charge, anticipation laced with peril. Alara met her at the door, pulling her inside with a urgency that bordered on fear, her kiss immediate, fierce, as if to seal the night against intruders. They dined in the kitchen this time, a departure from the formal room's ghosts. Stew simmering on the aga, bread fresh from the oven, the space intimate and lived in. Alara's laughter came easier, stories spilling like wine. Childhood escapades in the attic, hiding from her father's tempers, dreams of escaping to New Orleans, where jazz drowned out expectations. Zoe shared her own nights sketching by lantern light, capturing the curve of river bends and the wildness in a woman's stride. Their hands intertwined across the scarred pine table, fingers mapping unspoken promises. After, they wandered to the library, a cavern of leather-bound volumes and dust-moted light. Alara pulled a book from the shelf, Walt Whitman's Leaves of Grass, pages worn from her mother's secret readings. She loved this, Alara said, settling onto the velvet chaise, Zoe beside her. The parts about bodies electric, souls entwined. Said it was poetry, not sin. They read aloud, voices weaving through the room, the words a balm on wounds neither had named. But as the fire died to embers, Alara grew quiet, her head on Zoe's shoulder, the weight of silence pressing down. What if they find out? She whispered, tracing patterns on Zoe's palm. Aunt Beatrice, she's already sniffing around, asking why I'm not at the singles mixers. The ball's in 2 weeks. Everyone expects me to charm some eligible from Savannah, keep the Voss line pure. Zoe stiffened, the old ache of invisibility rising. And what do you expect of yourself? The question was gentle, but Alara flinched, sitting up, the book tumbling to the floor. I don't know. This us, it's like breathing fresh air after years in a closet. But the air out there's poisoned with their rules. They argued then, not with shouts but with the quiet barbs of fear. Zoe accusing Alara of 1 foot in, 1 out. Alara pleading the chains of legacy, the fear of disinheritance, of becoming the family pariah. You don't get it, Alara said, voice cracking. You're free in your way, land, solitude, no name to uphold. I carry Monroe on my back. Zoe stood, the room closing in. Freedom's an illusion if it's built on hiding. She left soon after, the door clicking shut like a judgment, the drive home a blur of tears and taillights. Days passed in strained silence, texts unanswered, the estate's lights mocking from afar. Zoe threw herself into the farm, mending fences under a relentless sun, the physical ache a distraction from the hollow in her chest. Lila noticed, of course, dragging her to the diner for pie and prying. Trouble in paradise? She teased, but her eyes held concern. Just life, Zoe muttered, fork scraping plate. But life in Monroe was never just anything. Rumors rippled through the pews at First Baptist, through the aisles at the Piggly Wiggly. Old man Hargrove pulled her aside at the feed store. Heard you're cozying up to the Voss girl. Watch your step. Those folks eat outsiders for breakfast. The isolation gnawed, a reminder of why Zoe had armored her heart. Love in this town was a transaction, tallied in status and secrets. Yet Alara's pull was magnetic, undeniable. On the 6th day a package arrived. A sketchbook, blank pages filled with Alara's hurried notes. Poems, apologies, please. I was wrong. Come back. Let me show you. Zoe went that night, the December chill biting through her jacket as she climbed the porch steps. Alara opened the door, eyes red-rimmed, pulling her into an embrace that trembled with relief. I can't lose this, she said against Zoe's neck. Lose you. They made love then, for the first time, in the upstairs bedroom with its 4-poster bed and lace curtains stirring like ghosts. It was tentative, reverent, hands exploring with the caution of explorers charting forbidden maps, breaths mingling in whispers of affirmation. Alara's touch was a revelation, shedding layers of pretense, her body arching under Zoe's like a bowstring released. In the afterglow, tangled in sheets scented with jasmine, Alara traced Zoe's collarbone. I love you, she said, the words a vow against the dawn. Zoe held her close, heart swelling with a joy fierce and fragile. And I you. The world outside could wait. But Monroe never waited. The holiday ball approached like a specter, invitations glittering with obligation. Alara attended alone as tradition demanded, her gown emerald silk that turned heads in the grand hall of the county club. Zoe stayed home, sketching by firelight, the pencil strokes angry lines of exclusion. Alara returned at midnight, dress rumpled, slipping through Zoe's door like a thief. It was hell, she said, collapsing into Zoe's arms. Dancing with ghosts, men with hands like vices, eyes measuring my worth in deeds and dowries. Zoe kissed away the salt of her tears, their bodies finding solace in rhythm. But in the morning, over eggs and coffee, Alara's phone buzzed incessantly. Aunt Beatrice, the messages piling like indictments. Spotted you looking distant. Time to settle down properly. Alara silenced it, but the shadow lingered. The new year dawned with tentative peace, dinners resuming under candlelight, now laced with the intimacy of lovers. They stole weekends away, driving to the coast where dunes muffled judgments, walking hand in hand on beaches where no one knew their names. Elara opened up about the straight facade, college flings with women dismissed as phases, a sorority sister whose kiss she'd buried under frat party noise. "I convinced myself it was curiosity," she admitted one salty evening, waves crashing like applause. "But with you it's truth." Zoe shared her own scars. The high school crush on a cheerleader who recoiled in horror, the Atlanta girlfriend who demanded she leave Monroe's toxic dirt behind. "I stayed for the land," Zoe said, sand sifting through fingers. "Roots run deep even in clay." Back home the idol cracked under pressure. Elara's law firm hinted at partnership, if she stabilized her personal life. The Voss estate creaked with isolation, her aunt's visits laced with veiled threats. "The family's reputation is fragile, dear. Don't shatter it." One February night after a dinner of shrimp and grits by the fireside, Elara paced the parlor, wine glass clutched like a talisman. "We could leave," she said suddenly. "Sell the house, start over in Vermont, somewhere the winters are cold enough to freeze out the past." Zoe paused, fork midway to mouth. "And your work?" "The firm." Elara waved it off. "Screw the firm. I want us real out loud." The promise hung sweet, but Zoe tasted the undercurrent of desperation. "It's not that simple," she said softly. "Roots don't uproot overnight." Elara stopped, eyes flashing. "So we're to stay hidden forever? Friendly dinners till we're gray." The argument reignited old fires. Zoe's fear of half measures clashing with Elara's terror of total rupture. Words flew like sparks. Cowardice, selfishness, the unfair weight of worlds apart. Elara stormed upstairs, slamming the door. Zoe left in the rain, thunder masking her sobs. Reconciliation came haltingly, a week of voicemails and porch vigils. Elara appeared at the farm one dawn, bearing coffee and contrition. "I panicked," she said, handing over a steaming mug. "But I mean it, I choose us." They rebuilt slowly, dinners turning to planning sessions, Vermont listings poured over by lamplight, dreams sketched in margins. Spring bloomed tentative, dogwoods unfurling pink against the sky, mirroring the fragility of their bond. Yet betrayal whispered in the winds. Elara's aunt uncovered a photo, snapped at the coast, their hands linked in a moment of carelessness. The confrontation came unannounced, Beatrice Voss sweeping into the estate like a hurricane in pearls. "What is this madness?" she demanded, photo thrust under Elara's nose. Elara stood firm, voice steady. "It's love, Aunt. My love." Beatrice's laugh was ice. "Love? This perversion? Your father would roll in his grave. Choose family or this. Folly." Elara chose, banishing her aunt with trembling resolve. But the fracture had begun, tendrils of doubt creeping in. Zoe sensed it in the dinner's dimming light. Elara's smile strained, her touches hesitant. Summer heat pressed down, amplifying tensions. At a town picnic, eyes followed them. Elara's arm brushing Zoe's too long, whispers rustling like dry leaves. Lila pulled Zoe aside. "They're circling. Be careful." Elara confessed that night, over grilled corn and candle wax pooling like tears. The firm's withdrawing the partnership talk. Subtle but clear. And the estate. Beatrice is contesting the will, saying I'm unfit. Zoe's heart clenched. "We fight." But Elara's eyes held shadows. "Do we? Or do I spare you the fallout?" The question lingered, a prelude to the storm that would test if love could weather society's gale. July's sun baked Monroe into a furnace, the air shimmering with heat that mirrored the rising fever in their lives. Zoe harvested tomatoes from her garden that morning, the vines heavy with fruit that burst red and warm in her hands, a reminder of abundance even as scarcity loomed. Elara's calls had grown sporadic, laced with apologies, late nights at the office, strategy sessions with firm partners who eyed her like a liability. "It's temporary," she'd assure, voice thin as summer air. Zoe wanted to believe, but doubt rooted deep, tendrils wrapping her heart. The dinner invitation came midweek, scrawled on Voss letterhead. "Need you. 7 p.m. Please." Zoe arrived early, The estate's gardens wilted under the drought, roses drooping like weary confidantes. Elara greeted her with a kiss that tasted of desperation, her linen dress clinging in the humidity. "I've missed this," she murmured, leading Zoe to the gazebo, where a table waited, picnic-style, chilled white wine sweating in buckets, charcuterie arranged like an offering. They ate in the fading light, fireflies winking approval as Elara unburdened. The firm's cold shoulders, Beatrice's lawyers circling the estate like vultures, letters arriving with legalese that choked her sleep. "They're painting me as unstable," she said, olive spear piercing cheese with undue force. "Because of us. Because I won't parade a man on my arm." Zoe's hand covered hers, steadying. "Then let them see. Come out, at the Harvest Festival next month. Together." Elara's laugh was brittle, scattering like leaves. "In Monroe? They'd stone us or worse, ostracize till we starve." She pulled away, pacing the gazebo's edge, skirt swirling. "I thought Vermont was the answer, but now. It's like chains I forged myself." The words stung, reopening wounds. Zoe stood, voice low. "Or you forged new ones by staying silent." They clashed again, voices rising with the cicadas, Zoe demanding visibility, Elara pleading pragmatism, the gazebo a coliseum for their private gladiators. Elara ended it, collapsing onto the bench, head in hands. "I love you too much to drag you under." Tears wet her palms and Zoe knelt, gathering her close. "Love doesn't drown, it swims." They made love there under the stars, urgent and reclaiming, bodies a testament against the encroaching dark. Fireflies haloed them, witnesses to a vow renewed in sweat and sighs. But dawn brought no clarity, only hangovers of heart and head. Elara threw herself into work, late dinners replaced by brief calls, her voice echoing hollow from office walls. Zoe filled the void with farm labor, tilling soil that resisted like her resolve. Lila's visits a lifeline of sarcasm and support. "She's scared," Lila said one evening, shelling peas on the porch. "Voss pride's a beast. But beasts can be tamed, or they turn." August deepened the divide, heat waves cracking the earth. Elara's invitations resumed but shadowed. Quick bite after court? They'd meet at the diner, booth shielding stolen touches, eyes darting for familiar faces. The intimacy frayed, replaced by urgency, as if each meal might be the last. One night, over burgers and whispers, Elara confessed a deeper cut. Beatrice offered a deal. "Reinstate the will if I seek counseling." Conversion therapy they call it now. Dressed in compassion. Zoe's fork dropped, rage coiling. "And you considered it?" The accusation hung, and Elara's flinch confirmed it. For a moment. To buy time, to protect us. The lie soured the air, and Zoe left without dessert, the diner's neon buzzing like judgment. Reconciliation simmered in texts, apologies layered like varnish over cracks. Elara appeared at the farm unannounced, bearing wildflowers and wine, her eyes pleading. "I was wrong. No deals, no hiding." They spent the weekend barricaded inside, lovers' retreat, lazy mornings in bed, afternoons sketching each other by the creek, evenings cooking under stars. Elara's laughter returned, full-throated, and Zoe dared hope. Yet the town's pulse quickened. At the feed store, customers lingered, questions veiled as chatter. "Elara Voss been by lately? Fine woman, needs a good match." Zoe deflected with smiles, but inside the pressure built, a boiler on the verge. The betrayal struck on a sweltering September eve, the Harvest Festival's bonfires already smoking in the distance. Zoe waited at the estate for their planned friendly escape. Picnic under the oaks, away from crowds. Hours passed, texts unanswered, until her phone lit with Elara's name. "Can't make it. Emergency at firm." Doubt not, but Zoe drove anyway, the festival's lights twinkling mockery. She parked at the edge, weaving through revelers, cotton candy scents mingling with barbecue, fiddles wailing laments. There by the maypole was Elara, arm linked with a man Zoe recognized from photos. Thomas, the ex, returned like a bad sequel. He was polished, Savannah-slick, his hand on her elbow proprietary. Zoe's stomach plummeted, the world tilting. She watched from shadows as they danced, Elara's smile practiced, her eyes scanning the crowd, searching for her. Thomas leaned in, words lost to music, and Elara nodded, tension in her shoulders. It looked like negotiation, a performance for prying eyes. Aunt Beatrice nearby, beaming approval, the Voss circle closing ranks. Rage and hurt warred as Zoe slipped away, the bonfire's heat no match for the ice in her veins. She drove to the farm, slamming doors, tears hot on cheeks. The phone rang, Alara frantic. Zoe, wait, it's not what? You danced with him. Zoe cut in, voice steel. After everything. Cover. Alara pleaded through static. Beatrice cornered me, threatened exposure. I had to play along just till I could slip out. Lies upon lies, Zoe whispered, the line going dead in her hand. She curled on the porch, stars and different witnesses, the betrayal a knife twist. Not just the dance but the ease of it, the fallback to straight scripts when pressure mounted. Alara arrived at midnight, pounding the door, rain-soaked and wild-eyed. Let me explain. Zoe opened it, arms crossed, the threshold a chasm. Alara spilled it all. Beatrice's ultimatum at the firm. Feign reconciliation with Thomas or face disbarment, whispers, estate seizure. He's in on it reluctantly, old family ties. It was theater, Zoe. For survival. Zoe searched her face, seeing the fracture lines. Survival at whose cost? Mine. The argument raged, porch light flickering like their flame. Accusations of cowardice, pleas of cornered desperation. Alara grabbed her wrists, pulling close. I choose you. Every time. They kissed through tears, salt mingling with rain. Bodies crashing inside like waves on rock. It was cathartic, furious. Nails raking backs, breaths ragged with reclamation. But in the quiet after, tangled on the living room rug, Alara's whisper chilled. What if I can't be brave enough? Zoe held her, but sleep evaded, the betrayal's echo a drumbeat. Days blurred into guarded truce, dinners resuming with caution. Candlelight dimmed by suspicion. Alara pulled strings, quietly confronting Beatrice, filing counters to the will contest, even confiding in a firm mentor who proved an unexpected ally. October brought cooler winds, leaves carpeting paths like fallen warnings. They attended a low-key town event together. Alara's hand on Zoe's back, subtle but present, a quiet defiance. Whispers followed, but so did nods from unlikely quarters. Lila's friends, a librarian who'd lost a daughter to similar judgments. Yet the climax brewed in shadows. Thomas, emboldened by Beatrice's machinations, cornered Alara at a courthouse fundraiser, his proposal renewed, not love but alliance. Marry me, keep the name clean. Your indiscretions stay buried. Alara refused, voice ice. My heart's not for sale. But the encounter shook her, relayed to Zoe over a tense dinner. Fork-stabbing salad like foes. He's not done, Alara said. And Beatrice. She's rallying the old guard. Zoe reached across, squeezing. Then we rally ours. They plotted letters to allies, a blog post Alara drafted anonymously on queer rights in the South, seeds of public stand. But betrayal's second strike came swift. Lila called at dawn. Check the paper. The local rag screamed headlines. Voss heiress in scandalous affair, threat to family legacy? Photos grainy but damning, snatched at the coast, hands linked. Another from the farm porch, blurred embrace. Beatrice's doing leaked to shame. Alara's phone exploded. Firm calls, Aunt's gloating voicemail. Told you, dear. Choose wisely. She shattered the glass against the wall, shards glittering like broken trust. Zoe held her as sobs racked, the estate a tomb of exposure. We face it, Zoe said, wiping tears. Together. Alara nodded, fire kindling in her eyes. But the damage rippled. Clients fleeing the firm, invitations revoked, the town dividing into camps. Loyalists and liberals, old blood and new blood. The conflict peaked at a town hall meeting. Beatrice commandeering the mic to decry moral decay eroding our values. Alara stood, voice trembling then stealing. Values? Or control? The room hushed, Zoe in the back, heart-pounding pride and fear. Words flew, accusations of perversion, defenses of love's humanity. Beatrice sneered. This isn't Atlanta, it's Monroe. We have standards. Alara's retort cut deep. Standards that crush souls? I won't bend to that. She took Zoe's hand then, public, defiant. the room erupting in gasps, applause, jeers. They fled to the truck, adrenaline surging, laughter bubbling through tears. "We did it," Alara gasped, kissing Zoe fierce. But victory tasted bittersweet. The war wasn't won, only a battle. November's chill settled over Monroe like a shroud, the scandal's frost lingering in every glance, every hushed conversation at the post office or gas pump. Zoe navigated the feed store with chin lifted, customers' stares sliding off her like rain on tin. Some averted eyes in disapproval, others offering quiet nods of solidarity, the town fracturing along fault lines long dormant. Alara, stripped of her firm's veneer, worked pro bono from the estate's library, defending evicted tenants and battered women, her briefcase now a satchel slung over shoulder, defiance in every stride. Their dinners persisted, anchors in the storm, candlelight a ritual of resilience, meals simple but shared. Venison stew from Zoe's hunt, apple pie baked with fruit from the farm's orchard. One evening as frost etched the windows, Alara raised her glass, eyes reflecting flame. "To us outlaws in our own town." Zoe clinked, warmth spreading. "To survival." But survival demanded strategy. They met with Lila and a handful of allies, a queer youth counselor from Macon, a progressive pastor who'd lost his pulpit for similar stands. Over coffee in the farm's kitchen, maps unrolled. Vermont still beckoned. But now with Monroe's redemption in mind, fundraisers, awareness nights, turning scandal to spark. Yet pressure mounted like gathering clouds. Beatrice filed formal suit, contesting not just the will but Alara's mental competency. Affidavits from concerned relatives painting Alara as delusional, influenced by undesirables. Thomas lurked in the periphery, his bank's loan suddenly tightening on the farm. Subtle sabotage, a noose disguised as paperwork. Zoe confronted him at the county bank, the lobby's marble echoing her boots. "Call off your dogs," she said, voice low thunder. Thomas leaned back, tie straight as his smile. "Alara's choice, Harlan. But family protects its own. You? You're collateral." The threat coiled in Zoe's gut, relayed to Alara over a dinner turned somber, candles sputtering like hope. "Sell the farm if you must," Alara urged, but Zoe shook head. "It's my line in the sand. We fight on our ground." The fight intensified, court dates looming like guillotines. Alara's testimony came first, the judge's chambers stuffy with old law books and older biases. She spoke unflinchingly. Love as human right, not privilege. The Voss legacy as service, not subjugation. Beatrice's cross-examination was venom. "This liaison, is it revenge? Against your father's memory?" Alara's reply echoed. "No. It's awakening." Zoe waited outside, heart in throat, their clasped hands post-hearing a victory small but seismic. Emboldened, they hosted a gathering at the estate. Dozens crammed into the parlor, rainbow flags discreet on mantels, speakers sharing stories of hidden lives in the South. Alara emceed, voice steady, Zoe at her side, the room a tapestry of faces. Farmers, teachers, kids with eyes wide at possibility. Laughter mingled with tears, donations poured for a local queer resource center. Seeds of change in clay soil. But betrayal's shadow lengthened. Midway through, a brick crashed a window, scrawled with slurs, glass shattering like illusions. Panic rippled, but Alara stood firm. "This is why we gather. Fear loses when we hold on." They cleaned together, shards swept into dustpans, the breach mended with plywood and resolve. Privately, the strain etched lines, Alara's sleep fractured by nightmares, Zoe's sketches turning abstract, swirls of anger and ache. One night, after a dinner of silence broken by sobs, Alara confessed, "I saw Thomas today. Offered money to leave. For your sake." Zoe's fork stilled. "And?" Alara met her gaze. "Told him to burn it." The kiss that followed was fierce, reclaiming territory, but doubt lingered, a third presence at table. December brought the court's ruling. Will upheld, but with stipulations, Alara's conduct monitored, estate trustees installed. Beatrice crowed partial victory, her Christmas cards laced with barbs. The town split further, boycotts hitting the feed store but counterwaves too. Locals shopping in solidarity, a mural appearing on the courthouse wall. Two hands intertwined, vines of dogwood weaving them. Alara and Zoe leaned into each other, dinners evolving to strategy sessions laced with tenderness, plans for the center, Vermont as backup, love as compass. New Year's Eve found them on the estate's roof, blankets wrapped, fireworks bursting over fields. To new beginnings, Alara toasted with champagne, lips brushing Zoe's. But January's gale howled betrayal's final howl. Anonymous letters arrived, photos of their intimate moments, stolen perhaps by a handyman or neighbor spy, demands for silence or exposure wider. The firm, sensing blood, pressured Alara's return. Rehabilitate your image. Date appropriately. Alara burned the letters in the hearth, flames devouring evidence. No more games. But the climax crested at a family confrontation. Beatrice summoning Alara to the old Voss cabin in the woods. Final talk. Zoe insisted on going, but Alara refused. This is mine to end. She returned hollow-eyed, bruises blooming on wrists from a scuffle, Beatrice's grip, unyielding. She said she'd ruin you, Alara whispered over a dinner untouched. Disinherit me fully, sue the farm for alienation. Called you a predator. Zoe's rage boiled, but Alara's tears cooled it to resolve. We expose her. All of it, the threats, the manipulations. They drafted a statement, sent to the paper, allies amplifying. Monroe loves all trending locally, protests at the bank. The backlash surged. Thomas's resignation under scrutiny, Beatrice's social exile as enablers turned. But the personal toll mounted. Alara's collapse one night, fevered from exhaustion, Zoe nursing her through delirium, whispers of I'm sorry fever born. Recovery brought clarity, dinners now with allies, candlelight shared. Spring teased buds mirroring thaw. Yet the true climax unfolded at the resource center's opening. Ribbon cut by Alara and Zoe, hands steady, crowd diverse and roaring. Beatrice appeared uninvited, face ashen, her plea private. Come home, child. End this farce. Alara's refusal was poetry. Home is her. The crowd cheered, but later alone Alara broke. Did I destroy us all? Zoe held her. You birthed something better. The conflict peaked in quiet revelation. Thomas's confession emailed, Beatrice's puppet, but remorseful, evidence attached of forgeries. They leveraged it, suit dropped, peace tentative. Through it their love deepened, forged in fire. Dinners, intimate sacraments, touches, maps of endurance. But the storms I held still more. Alara's pregnancy scare. No just stress, but it forced futures. Children perhaps via paths unstraight. As summer waned, Monroe breathed easier, murals multiplying, judgments softening. Yet scars remained, reminders that freedom was vigil, not gift. Autumn's palette bled across Monroe's hills, golds and crimsons, a mockery of the raw edges left by summer's siege. Zoe woke to Alara's side of the bed empty more often now, the estate's guest room her retreat when doubts resurfaced like stubborn weeds. Their dinners continued, but the candlelight flickered erratically, conversations veering from dreams to damages. Lost clients tallied like casualties, the farm's loans renegotiated but looming. One October evening, rain pattering like impatient fingers, Zoe set the table with care. Butternut squash bisque steaming, fresh bread tearing soft under knives. Alara arrived late, hair damp, eyes shadowed from a day volunteering at the center. The kids today, she said, spooning soup. One girl, 16, came out to her folks. They locked her out. Reminds me of us, Zoe finished, the parallel a ghost at feast. Alara nodded, vulnerability cracking her poise. I keep waiting for the other shoe. The town to turn, Beatrice to strike again. Zoe reached for her hand. We've built walls. But walls had gates and betrayal slithered through cracks. Lila brought the news over pie the next day. Heard from my sources, Thomas is back in town. Meeting with Beatrice. Plotting round 2, maybe custody plays if you two ever. The implication hung, childless but potent. Zoe confronted Alara that night. Dinner abandoned for pacing. Is he contacting you? Alara paled, then deflated. Texts. Apologies mostly. But one. Offering support, if we reconsider. Rage flared. Reconsider? After everything. Alara's tears came hot. I deleted them. But it stirs it up, the fear I'll lose you to this mess I dragged you into. The argument spiraled, old fissures widening. Zoe's accusation of lingering ties, Alara's plea of haunted pasts. "You're punishing me for ghosts," Alara cried, storming to the library, door slamming echo. Zoe followed, finding her curled among books, Whitman open to passages of division. "I'm scared too," Zoe admitted, kneeling. "Of breaking." They reconciled in whispers, bodies seeking solace, but the seed of fracture took root. November's chill deepened isolation. The center thrived, workshops on coming out, support groups humming, but Alara withdrew, volunteering till exhaustion, avoiding dinners with excuses. Zoe filled evenings alone, sketching Alara's profile from memory, lines softening with love, sharpening with loss. The breakdown crested mid-month, a dinner planned as anniversary. First kiss marked by calendar. Zoe arrived with wine and wildflowers, but the estate felt vacant, candles unlit. Alara met her in the hall, face drawn. "Can't tonight." Beatrice called. "Emergency mediation." "Estate stuff." Suspicion coiled. "With Thomas." Alara hesitated, a beat too long. "He's involved. Family lawyer now." Zoe set the bouquet down, stem snapping. "Again? After the evidence, the confession." "It's closure," Alara insisted, but eyes darted. Zoe left, drive home a fury of wipers and what-ifs. Truth unraveled next dawn. Lila's text with a photo, Alara and Thomas at the cabin, arms linked in what looked like intimacy, time-stamped late. "Saw this online. Anonymous tip. Sorry cuz." Zoe's world fractured, phone shattering on kitchen tile. She drove to the estate, bursting in to find Alara alone, packing boxes, Vermont listings scattered. "Tell me it's fake," Zoe demanded, photo thrust forward. Alara's face crumpled. "It's not what, last night after mediation Beatrice ambushed us. Pushed the narrative, photos staged by her PI. But I hugged him goodbye. For old times. Comfort. It was stupid, Zoe. A moment of weakness." "Weakness?" Zoe's voice broke. "Or relapse." The floodgates opened, hurt pouring as accusations. The dances, the deals, now this echo of straight salvation. Alara begged on knees. "I love you. Only you." It was panic, not desire. But trust once cracked leaked faith. Zoe fled to the farm, barricading in solitude, days blurring to numbness, fields untended, sketches burned in barrel. Lila came, bearing soup and silence, then truth. Beatrice paid the PI. But Alara, she didn't fight the hug. Looked like surrender. The tantrum came nights later, Alara at the door, rain lashed. "Let me in." Zoe did, but walls rose higher. They talked till dawn, Alara's confessions raw. The pull of familiarity, the terror of forever outcast, a kiss with Thomas in the cabin's haze. Not passion but probing, testing if straight could still fit. Zoe's heart shattered, audible. "You tested? On us." Alara wept. "To end the doubt." "It didn't. You did." Betrayal's blade twisted deeper. Not just the act, but the secrecy, the dinner's duplicity persisting. Zoe packed a bag, leaving note. "Need space to breathe. Not goodbye. Maybe." She crashed with Lila. Nights in spare rooms, staring ceilings, replaying moments. Candlelight illusions, kisses laced with lies. The town buzzed. Scandal reignited, center donations dipping. Whispers of Voss curse. Alara's voicemails piled. "Please, poems, promises. Come to dinner. One last. Please." Zoe went, hollow, the table set as always, but Alara's eyes hollowed matches. "I ended it, all ties. Thomas gone, Beatrice blocked. But you. If you leave, take my heart with." Zoe sat, soup cooling untouched. "Trust is soil, Alara. Yours eroded, mine." They dismantled then, word surgery on wounds. Alara's childhood indoctrination. Straight as survival, queer as exile. Zoe's guarded loves, always waiting for the fall. The evening peaked in raw honesty. Alara admitting therapy sessions, unpacking internalized shame. Zoe voicing abandonment fears, farm as fortress against hurt. No easy mend but a bridge sketched. Time counseling together. Dinners as therapy, not temptation. Yet tantrums, aftershocks, quaked. December isolated them. Alara at the estate, Zoe at farm text tentative bridges. Holiday lights mocked from town square. Gatherings skipped for solitude. Lila mediated, dinners of 3 awkward but thawing. New Year brought pivot. Alara at Zoe's door, Vermont key in hand. House bought sight unseen. A fresh start offered. Not escape. Evolution. Zoe hesitated, then stepped forward, embraced tentative. But breakdown's echo lingered. Trust a sapling in scarred earth. They packed jointly, dinners nomadic, picnics in fields, farewells to Monroe's ghosts. The town mourned and celebrated. Center's gala bittersweet, speeches lauding their spark. Driving north, snow dusting rearview, Alara's hand found Zoe's. We rebuild. Zoe squeezed, hope flickering. Yet in Vermont's quiet, first dinner candlelit in cabin kitchen, old doubts surfaced, Alara's flinch at a neighbor's casual query on back home. Old habits, she murmured. Zoe nodded, but inside the fracture ached. A reminder that healing was horizon, not arrival. Winter wrapped Vermont in white silence, the cabin's logs creaking under snow's weight. A far cry from Georgia's humid whispers. Zoe and Alara settled into rhythm. Firewood chopped at dawn, evenings by hearth sketching futures, dinners simple sacraments of salmon and greens, candlelight steady now, no shadows of Monroe lurking. The town of Willow Creek welcomed quietly. A bookstore owner with rainbow pins, a mayor who'd marched in 80s pride. No stairs, just space to breathe. Yet liberation's dawn broke slow. Alara dove into remote legal aid, championing rural queers via Zoom. Her voice gaining steel from distance. Zoe tended a greenhouse, seeds sprouting metaphors, patience yielding green against frost. Their first joint therapy session in Burlington unpacked baggage. Alara's shame unpacked like old trunks, Zoe's walls dismantled brick by confession. One February night, snow-muffling world, dinner turned pivotal. Roast chicken scented with rosemary from Ship Georgia Sprigs, a nod to roots. Alara set down fork, eyes clear. I want kids. With you. IVF donors, whatever path. Zoe paused, heart swelling. Us as family? The talk flowed, dreams tangible. Adoptions, surrogacies, a home echoing with small feet. Spring thawed more than earth. Lilacs blooming in the yard, mirroring Alara's openness. She blogged publicly now, from straight scripts to true pages, essays on denial's cost, love's redemption. Responses flooded. Thanks from hidden hearts, debates from skeptics, but Alara engaged, fearless. Zoe exhibited sketches in Montpelier. Landscapes laced with figures entwined, titles like Candlelight Confessions. Sales funded center expansions back south, full circle. At opening night, Alara's arm linked hers, whispers of proud from strangers a bomb. But echoes tested. A call from Lila. Beatrice ill, estate in limbo, wants reconciliation. Alara weighed, then declined. Boundaries, not bridges. The choice liberated, dinner that night celebratory, wine toasts to severings. Summer brought visitors. Lila and partner. Farm tales swapped over barbecues, laughter healing scars. They hiked green mountains, hands clasped unthinking, visibility natural as birdsong. Climax's remnants surfaced in fall. A letter from Thomas forwarded. Remorse, therapy's fruit, no strings. Alara shared it over cider, no secrets. Closure, she said. Zoe burned it in fire pit, ashes to wind. Ours now. The center's anniversary gala streamed live, Alara keynoting. Love defies scripts, straight, bent, unbroken. It humanizes. Zoe watched from audience, tears proud. Post-speech, embrace on stage, cheers a chorus. Winter circled back. Second anniversary dinner intimate. Vermont maple glazed duck, candles multiplied. Alara knelt. Ring simple gold. Marry me. Not for society but us. Zoe yes, kiss ceiling. Years wove forward, adoption of twins, cabin expanded to home, Monroe visits cordial, Beatrice's passing a quiet thaw, will bequeathed with note. Live true. The town evolved, center beacon. Their story rippled. Book deals, TED Talks, but core remained dinners. Candlelit, honest, havens from world's weights. Betrayal's bitter forged gold. Loyalty to self, freedom's fierce embrace. In twilight years, porch swings creaking, they'd recount the invitations that weren't friendly, the straight claim crumbling to truth. You saved me, Ilarit'd say. Zoe. We saved each other. Humanity's arc bent toward light. Not straight but whole. In love's unyielding script, they found the ending unwritten, pages theirs to fill.